Hi, I'm State Representative Drew Stokesbary from the 31st Legislative District, and I wanted to talk a little bit about Washington State's budget process and a bill I have that I think will make it a little bit better. First, a little background though. Here in Washington State, the way we do budgets probably isn't like the way you build your budget at home. We do something that's called maintenance level budgeting, and that means that every year, every state agency will submit to the governor a list of what it would cost that agency to continue providing services at the same level to the same group of people for the next 2 years as it has cost them for the last 2 years. But once you consider things like inflation and wage growth and the state's larger population and what's called a higher caseload, that number, that dollar amount, the cost of providing those services is almost always going to be higher. And so then when those numbers come back to the legislature, we almost always fund that maintenance level request. And then we spend our time debating what new items, we call it policy items. We debate what new policy items we should spend money on. And so again, over time, this has the effect of making the budget always go up. And it's nearly impossible to ever have the budget come back down. And for families that have income that fluctuates a little bit or isn't always guaranteed to grow forever and ever, this can be a little bit of a confusing way of doing things. So an alternative to this maintenance level budgeting is something called zero-based budgeting. And that is a little bit more similar to how people build their household budgets. In zero-based budgeting, the budget is built from the ground up. Every year, agencies will look at all of the programs they're doing and evaluate what the performance of those programs is like, and oftentimes have to rank those programs, and they will come back to the legislature with a request of these programs are what we really want and these programs we could probably live without. The one downside of zero-based budgeting is that it's really time intensive. And in fact, the state budget has grown so large, it's going to be approaching $50 billion of discretionary spending, that it just takes a lot of staff time to do this. So this year I introduced a bill, House Bill 1817, that I think gives us the best of both worlds. It'll ask the agencies to do a zero-based budget, but only once every 10 years, so that the burden on staff time is somewhat minimized. And also too, once you zero-base a budget once, you won't find a whole lot of savings if you zero-base that budget again in year 2 or year 3. So by spreading out the zero-basing over a period of 10 years, you sort of get the best of both worlds. So one of the downsides of maintenance level budgeting is just how opaque it is to the taxpayers and our constituents. If you ever read a budget bill, it's actually really, really difficult, if not impossible, to determine what the government is actually spending money on. If you read through that budget bill, it'll list by agency how much money is going to that agency, and it's oftentimes in the millions, if not billions of dollars. And there's hardly any other direction to that agency on how to spend that money. So if you're a concerned citizen and you want to find out what Department of Commerce is spending their budget on, it's extraordinarily difficult to find that out. And if you read the text of the bill, it's not in there. Because what happens is the only thing in the budget bill are the new items we added to Department of Commerce's budget for that budget cycle. But they receive funding for everything that got added in all previous cycles. So you have to go back budget to budget to budget, potentially 30 or 40 years in the past to find out what Department of Commerce is being asked to do and how much money they're getting for it. So that's one of the big problems with maintenance level budgeting, is that it's so opaque to the general public and frankly even to a lot of legislators. The other big advantage of an approach like this is that it makes the budget process much more transparent to the public. Right now the budget is written mainly by senior budget writers, and they spend a lot of time going through program by program and looking at the details. But it's somewhat of an informal process, and it's really opaque to the public at large. So the other advantage of a zero-based budget process and the bill that I'm proposing is that all of this information on program performance and everything a agency does will all be available to the public. So just as legislators are examining the performance of all of the programs that agencies perform, citizens and voters, they can do the exact same thing, and they can write me and other folks on the Appropriations Committee and let us know how you feel about all of these programs that government is providing and which ones you think are valuable and which ones that you think are less valuable. The bill, House Bill 1817, it actually passed the Senate. There was a Senate companion sponsored by Senator Mark Miloscia. It passed the Senate earlier this session by a vote of 28-21. And this past week, the House Appropriations Committee actually heard the bill. And it's the first time that the Appropriations Committee has heard a budget reform bill like this in a long, long time. So the way this bill works is it will have the legislature divide all of state government into basically 5 buckets. And it allows the legislature a little bit of flexibility to set up those 5 buckets however we want. So basically 1/5 of state government will go into bucket A, another 1/5 will go into bucket B, and so forth. And then in the first year this bill takes effect, the agencies that are in bucket A would zero base their budgets. And all the others, buckets B, C, D, and E, we would continue to do the same maintenance level budgeting that we always do. And then the next year we would shift which bucket we zero base to bucket B. And the other 4 buckets we would do the same budget process as always. And then again 2 years later we'd go to bucket C and then D and E and so on, and then we would rotate back to bucket A. And so this has the effect of requiring about 1/5 of the staff time of a full zero-based budget effort, but you really get the benefits of a true zero-based budget because every state agency, every government program will have their budget zero-based at least once every 10 years. Keep an eye out on this bill, House Bill 1817, but I'm really optimistic that if the legislature does something like this, it'll be a tremendous benefit to all Washingtonians because we'll have much more confidence in the budget process, it'll be much more open to the public, and we'll be able to do a much better job of actually keeping our costs under control.